Hello there, welcome back. Welcome back to the Technology Innovation Hub. It's going to be another session from Oracle portal. Let me share the screen. So in Oracle portal, we just, if you take a look at the channel, just completed lesson number 6 on CP1. So let's start the instance explanation on with in the next lesson now. That means this lesson is going to be the instance explanation. Actually, we initiated that one in the previous lesson itself, but let's start from the beginning again. But now, up to now, it has been CP1. So with this, I'm going to upgrade the competencies to CP2 because now we have learned certain basics, right? CP1, right? So now we are aware of login process, sys users, and SID settings, right? And even the installation is done, right? So let's go for CP2. So this lesson is going to be CP2 lesson 1, but still the topic will be same, getting familiar with Oracle database. All right. So this is the document that we have been following. Right. So let's start with the architecture. Okay, so this is the place we have stopped, and let me just increase the size a bit. Right, so this is what getting familiar with Oracle activity 2 continuous, right? That is what getting familiar with instance. So defining the instance, the very first thing is that. So Oracle instance, right? Now practically we have seen it, right? If I just recall for you to understand it better, you may remember now we can just log in, right? And I think we had to give the password because yeah, now we have to give everything because we put the restriction now, and that's okay. That is a good practice, right? So, and if I just shut down, just to recall the things, you may remember the component instance was there, right? And now it will shut down. It's shutting down in the opposite order, closing, dismounting, and finally the instance will get shut down. But when we start up the instance, let it, yeah, instance shut down. And when you type startup, you may remember the very first component was instance. This is the very first component. Now, what you're trying to do to understand what's happening behind, because it just says Oracle instance started, but you can see it says something called system global area, right? And it shows a size, right? And we have fixed size, variable size, database buffers. So that means for the instance, it gives you this much of information. So on these terms, we are going to understand what is the system global area, shortly known as SGA, or it is shared global area, and these buffers and redo buffers. So these are memory structures. So that is what we are going to understand in detail now. Okay, so if I go back to the document, you can see for the instance, we have two explanations. One is the theoretical explanation, other one is the practical explanation. Right? So in theoretically, we can see it is equal to memory structures and background processes. That is what. So in theoretically, instance is equal to collection of memory structures and background processes. So a single name for the memory structures, collection of memory structures, we can give a single name, either shared global area or system global area. That's what SGA stands for, right? So that's the theoretical explanation, collection of memory structures and background processes. Now you can see the SGA, it was there while, I mean, starting the instance here, right? Shared global area, system global area. And soon you will see the database buffer cache. This is DB database buffer, means the buffer cache and redo buffers, right? Okay. So the second thing is practical explanation. What is the practical explanation? That is, it says equal to the database. Instance is equal to database. The reason is you saw when the database is starting, the very first component is instance is started. That's what, right? So without the instance, it looks like there is no database. We can't have the database up and running, right? So that's what it says. Practically, instance is equal to database. That's okay. But let's get into the theoretical explanation first so that you can understand why this is said like this as well. All right. So what are the components? Now, first thing is memory structures. Let's go to dig into the memory structures and see what are those. And you can see the image here. Let me increase the size. So if you take a look at now, this is again a copy from the Oracle Interactive Reference. We will visit there soon. And you can see the memory structures, and the name is there, System Global Area, SGA, right? And you can see the same is referred, System Global Area, right? And so what are the components? The main memory components are database buffer cache. This is what? Database buffer cache, shared port, and the redo log buffer. So those are the main memory components. But other than that, you can see optional memory areas as well here. It's like large pool, you can see Java pool, right? Streams pool, right? So likewise, so there are optional flashback buffer, optional memory areas, right? So flashback is a different total, it's a total different scope. We will learn it later. So, but here our focus is going to be the what are the primary or what are the compulsory memory structures? Compulsory memory structures. So what are the compulsory memory structures for database instance to run? Buffer cache, redo log buffer, and share pool. You can see share pool is subdivided into subcomponents like library cache, data dictionary cache. Let's keep it for a while. We will learn it later. Because this is not the architecture deep dive. This is just to understand the instance. Architecture will be done in great detail. So we are going to dig into each and every component and how those things are interact each other as well, right? So that we will do later. For the time being, SGA is primarily about buffer cache, redo, and share. Okay. So what the next thing is background processes. So what are the background processes? Now instance is SQL, memory structures, and background processes. Now, so what are the background processes? If you go down in the explanation, I have given it here. These are the things: checkpoint, DB writer, log writer, system monitor, process monitor. Again, these are compulsory things. For Oracle database to run, at least these 5 background processes must be up and running. Otherwise, instance will fail. Right? This is a mandatory because failure of any of these background processes will cause instance to crash or shut down. We will learn those things later. Right, so what are these? Checkpoint, database writer, log writer, system monitor, and process monitor. So we need to go to the functionality little by little. So these are the background processes. We have more than 15 to 20, even more than that, right? We will see the list of background processes, but mandatory, these are mandatory things, right? And I have given explanation for these memory structures as well, but let's come back to that one later. So now we got the definition, theoretical explanation, instance is equal to memory structures. Now we know what are the compulsory memory structures and background process. So that is what the theoretical explanation for instance in very brief, right? Okay, let's get in now. If you want to see more details here, let's look at some references from Oracle itself, because Oracle is giving a lot of things freely for you to study, right? No need to go for any other books, Oracle documentation, by example series. There are a lot of learning things there, right? So let's visit here. Now this one is what, this is from OBE, Oracle by example series. So let's go to that place. It will take you to the poster where I have extracted this image from, right? You can see. Right now, if you, yeah, this is 12C, that's okay, right? So understanding the fundamentals, this version is fine. But don't go beyond 12C, right? 11G is a little bit out, right? But let's stick to 12C if you want to learn the architecture. But from upwards from there, it's fine, right? 19C, 21C, that's okay, right? But this for basics, 12C also fine. But then again, this is not the multi-tenancy architecture. We are not touching the multi-tenancy architecture yet. We will be explaining it later. We are working on the traditional database architecture now, right? So this is the diagram. Right? This is interactive diagram, right? Very useful for a beginner. So why I'm telling interactive now? For example, if I click here, right? Now it will show you this one database architecture, and it will give you more references. You can go for this by example series, a very good practical series, right? For you to learn. For example, let's click there, right? If you sit there, this is by example series, and Oracle is giving for you to learn the Oracle database basics 2-day DBA guide, right? You can see creating a database, and a lot of practicals are here, right? So you can getting started with enterprise. Don't go for enterprise manager express, but okay, this one is fine, right? So the series is there with the hands-on tutorials, right? So if I click here, this is about installing and creating. Of course, now I have given those guys, right? So you can follow these things as well, no problem. But if you are following the channel, don't worry, everything is well explained in the channel in order step by step. So don't worry about the rest of the guides available in the internet. Just follow the channel. I'll be explaining everything from the scratch to the deep end, right? So it's okay to refer to this document, no problem. If you have any doubts on the explanation, either you can put a reach out me on the via the email, or you can put comments, and or else you can reach the documents as well, right? Okay, so okay, so interactive. Now, if I want to see these components, now for example, I want to see what is the purpose of this buffer cache, right? Okay, let's just click this view subsystem. View subsystem. Otherwise, it won't be interactive, right? View subsystem. Then it will automatically give a zoom view, right? And I can see now. Look at the very easy, right? I want to see what is shared pool. I click here, it will tell you what is shared pool, right? Portion of the STA that contains shared memory, constructs such as shared SQL area like that. So, and again, you can right away go to the documentation from here, right? And if I want to see an internal memory structure within the shared pool, like library cache and data dictionary cache, right? Let's click here. You can see it says what is a library cache is, right? Library cache is used for especially for this when you running SQL, fast fetch and execute steps are happening, right? For SQL execution plans and no. So let's learn those in later. An area of memory in shared pool. This cache includes shared SQL area, private SQL area, right? Yeah, execution plans are stored here, right? So and that is library cache. So this one will take you to the documentation, right? Yeah, let's click that. No problem. It will open in a new window. Yeah, it will move to the new position automatically. Yeah, it's going to the I think 12.1. That's okay, right? Memory architecture in 12.1, because this is a separate explanation is there. This is architecture, a little bit of high explanation. We will go there soon, but this is to understand the instance basics, right? Now again, I want to see. Now let's move it here, and I want to see this buffer cache, right? See each and every component you can click. Buffer cache. What is the buffer cache, right? And this is system global area. Yeah, for buffer cache, actually, they are giving subcomponent database buffer pools. What are the buffer pools, right? Likewise, so a buffer pool is a collection of buffers, right? That is inside the database buffer cache, because this is the main memory area in Oracle. Main memory means whatever the records you are fetching from the data files. The data files is the physical place where the data is stored. No, data means you have the schema, then within the schema you have tables, right? So in the tables you have records. So each and every record, there's a block size. When you read data, right, the server process will read data from table, right, and it will fetch blocks, right? Those blocks are going to get stored where? In the buffer cache. So in the buffer cache means within the buffer cache, we have subcomponent. Now buffer pool is one of those subcomponents, right? And each buffer pool, there's a particular block size. So within the block only those records are going to get stored. Okay. So I'm not going to go that much of deep at the moment. So let's understand those in the architecture explanation. But if you want further details, you can see if you click here, it will give you those explanations. We have keep buffer, recycle buffer for optimization of the buffer pool, and we have non-defer block sizes, because Oracle support multi-blocks, right? 8K, not only 8K, 2K, 4K, 8K, 16K, 32, 64, 120, it supports multiple blocks. And there's a reason for that, right? And by default, it doesn't available. We need to define those, right? So interactive diagram, very powerful. Just take a look at that as well. And if you want to see what is redo log, you click here, it will tell you. Redo log is just tracking all the changes for the records that are happening in the database buffer cache, right? So likewise, right? So just study there, and other than the explanation that I am doing, you can further study here, right? All right, right. So let's close that one here, right? Okay, so that is one of these things, right? And yeah, reference. What is this? We have architecture diagram tutorials. Here, let's click there as well to see what is that. Yeah, let's visit there. This is a PDF, right? right? We just copy that one. Copy and we just use it here, right? Okay, paste it. Oh yeah, that's the Oracle 19C technical architecture. This is maybe a little bit of deep for you at this stage as a beginner, but take a look at it. No worries, because we have some, in the next upcoming sessions, we need to learn the architecture now. So just take a look at it. Very big explanation is, very good explanation is there given here. Database server and how is interacts with the listener, and the request coming in, listener detects and go to the database server and verifies with the Oracle services likewise. You can see this instance, right? Just take a look at it. And yeah, again, SGA components I explained, right? System global area and program global area. PGA also there. We are not addressing at the moment. We are talking about only the instance, right? Only the SGA we are talking about at the moment. PGA will be explained later, and the background process. And background process we discussed about checkpoint, system monitor, DB writer, log writer, and process monitor. This one. So there are additional things, right? Not only these, there are more additional background process. Right? Okay, just take a look at that document as well. That's why I have given the reference for you to further study. And another one is there. Yeah, this is going to be a list of background processes, right? List of background processes. Should click should work, but control click is not. Anyway, doesn't matter. Right? You can do that. This is for you to get an idea. Yeah, there's appendix in Oracle database reference guide, list of background process. You can see from the alphabetic letter. These all are background process. Now we were talking about only the compulsory background process, right? So ACFS and memory manager, a lot of things. These all are background process, right? So nearly more than 50 is available, right? Depending on the features that you are enabling. So we have our background process. So right, latch management, Elmon, latch, this is registration, listener registration, right? And we were talking about this. This is memory manageability and monitor process, and yeah. So a lot of background processes are there. We are not going to focus everything. So these are the things we are explaining at the moment. Process monitor, right? And we have system monitor, right? S1 also should be there somewhere, right? And down, this is in alphabetical order, no, right? S1, right? So system monitor, those are critical background processes. Okay, just take a look at that one as well, right? And yeah, so finally, I have given this is for Weblogic, right? So like the database architecture, Oracle has another interactive diagram to Weblogic as well. So if somebody is interested, I just put it here, and you can see the 12C Weblogic interactive reference architecture diagram. So same way database explanation, they are explaining admin server and host machines and everything. So you can see compatibility statement, and if you take a look at, see, all the components are there, right? One by one they explain, right? So manage servers, right? It's a very good explanation again. So just somebody interested about the Weblogic server, you can take a look at that one as well, right? All right, so that is that. Yeah, let's close it. Okay, so those are references, right? You can take a look at further. So now we know the definition for the instance and theoretical aspect. So here we have the background. So let's try to dig it a little further now. As in figure 2.2, that is above picture, buffer pool, I just explained buffer pool or buffer cache, right? Which holds the data from data files. That's what I just explained. Whatever records taken from data files, which is on the disk, will be stored in the database buffer cache, right? And shared IO pool or shared pool, right? Shared IO pool or shared pool, which hold the execution plans in the data dictionary cache, right? Execution plans and the data dictionary cache. So because there are two components now. In mainly in the shared pool, we have library cache and data dictionary cache. Those are the main components. But here they are giving sub components here. But the main components are library cache and data dictionary cache, right? So library cache will be stored in the execution plans mainly, right? Data dictionary is just a cache from data dictionary cache is just a cache from system dbf file because we need the definitions of data, right? Okay, let's try to understand that one later, right? And all right, so that is that the shared pool. Then the third memory structure is redo log buffer, which holds the changes made to records the buffer. And third memory structure, any changes done to the buffer cache data. That means, let's say you have fetch a record, employee number, employee name, and salary. You're trying to put update, right? Once the update is done, the data is going to change now. Then Oracle will mark that record as a dirty buffer, which is not committed. And same time, redo log buffer going to track that change, not the whole record, only the change. Salary being updated to 1,000 to 10,000, likewise. So that is what in brief. So main three memory components: database buffer cache, shared pool, and redo log buffer. Then coming back to the background process, checkpoint synchronizes the control files and data files. So this is a bit of complicated process to understand, but don't worry, in the architecture we'll be explaining in more detail. For the time being, it's like this. When the commit command happens, Oracle never updates the database files. That is the nature of in Oracle database, right? When you type the commit, Oracle never updates the DBF files like other database. It's update the redo log files. So these things has to be synchronized at some point because redo log files are not the place where the data is. Data is in the database files, right? So checkpoint will be time to time updating the content from the committed data in the redo log file, and it will inform the database files these things are committed. And in the meantime, it will update the control file as well, right? So that's why it says synchronizing. So don't worry, let's understand that one in more detail later because we need to go for the checkpoint categories are there like full checkpoint, incremental checkpoints, right? Partial checkpoint. So we need to understand those. That is checkpoint. DB writer is very easy. This is going to update the database files from buffer cache, right? It's going to update the database files from the buffer cache because when necessary, there are conditions. I said not commit. Commit will never trigger DB writer, but there are other conditions, right? When there is no pre-buffers in the buffer cache, likewise, there are conditions for DB writer to write data from database buffer cache to database files, relevant database files. Then log writer what is going to do is going to update the redo log files. We have redo log files in Oracle database. And the system monitor performs critical such as instance recovery and date transition. Yes, so mainly for instance recovery in case of a failure, and process monitor is explaining about the date processes and all, right? So just the definitions only. We will go back and more details later, try to understand it later. And if you go down, this is there. It's okay. Before coming that, I will show you a more simplified picture like this. So now you can see this is a simplified picture, right? And in this, you can see the instance is there at the top, SGA, which you just understand system global area or share global area. The main three components are given here: database buffer cache, log buffer, and shared pool. And these are the background process. Main background process, I think S1 and P1 is not there. That's okay. DB writer, checkpoint, and log writer. And this is what I was telling earlier. A commit will trigger log writer. Commit will trigger log writer, which will update redo log files, right? And checkpoint is a time-to-time process which synchronize the content committed in the redo log file with the data files as well as in the control file. Synchronization process. And DB writer will update the changes from buffer cache to data file. Again, there are conditions. There are 9 conditions, right? Of course, for DB writer, there are 13 conditions. You will understand. For redo log buffer, there are 5 conditions or 4 conditions. You will understand those things, right? In architecture, that will be explained in more detail. So that is in brief, right? I think you got an brief idea because now this is physical structure. That means Oracle database files. Mainly, we have 3 types of database files in Oracle database: data file, control file, and log file. This is the logical structure, that is the instance, because this is in memory. This is in memory, that means volatile. But don't get confused. When I say memory, normally Oracle instance starts in virtual memory because it's optimized further. It is not going to touch the physical memory at first. Right? It is swapped between the physical memory as needed. Initially, Oracle instance will get started in the virtual memory. Right? So we have the physical structure separately and virtual memory separately and the RAM separately. But whatever the instance contents are volatile, because if there's something goes up, power down or crash, you're going to lose the content in the instance because it's in the memory, volatile, right? So that's why we need high availability and all. Because a single instance environment, at least we need to enable multiplexing and things to avoid losing data in case of failures, right? Because there are critical conditions. I can just tell you one condition on a single instance environment, because now, okay, I'll tell you for you to think. All the committed data in redo log buffer, all the committed data in redo log file, right? It takes certain bit of time, to update to the data file. Before that happens, if a database crash, not the database crash, let's say if an instance crash happens, now the contents are in redo log file, still the checkpoint is not done. So therefore, those things are not updated to the database file, right? So what will happen? Instance is crashed, and if something has goes wrong to the redo log file as well, that means database failure also has happened. Instance crash has happened, and again database failure also has happened, meaning the current redo log file, which is logwriter is writing in at the moment, is being crashed. That means one of the database files. That's why I'm telling it's a database failure as well, right? Instance failure is something that is only the memory crash, right? But current redo log file crash means you are experiencing a database failure as well, because physical structure being damaged. So current redo log file means what? That is the file where logwriter is writing in at the moment. That is where your latest committed data is, right? So if that file is crashed, right, now what we are going to happen? It is not in the data file as well. So then we are in trouble. We are going to lose data. So that's why in a single instance environment, Oracle is giving some best practices, right, to avoid these data losses. We should do something called multiplexing redo log files. That is something known as grouping redo log files, right? So we learn those things later. So, and control file also should be multiplexed. Okay. Right, for the time being, I think that is enough for this session. So we got an idea about Oracle instance and all. So I'll come back here and we'll continue from this place or not, right? Yeah, so I'll stop for this session. I'll meet you soon in the next session. Okay, have a great time. Bye bye.